So my name is Michael, and I started with an organization that worked with developmentally disabled people back in 1994, and I've kept that up for the past 20 years. It's something that I thoroughly love to do. It's the only job I can ever imagine myself doing, and through that I've learned so much about human behaviors, and as well as my own behavior, and that continues to grow. I think within every year that I work, there's something new to be learned. If interacting with people in a certain way, it can be like a physical blow if it's in a certain negative light or if it's against what they're used to. And so just as if you and I were to be physical, I may want a distance between us. So it's the same mentally. They would definitely want to keep a distance. And that way they can use their certain bridges or their certain connections to reach out, or you could use them to, reach me, but I can watch it happen. It's nothing jolting. It's like, oh, okay, this is a safe way to interact. There's the classic puppet, where people will they use the puppets to talk back and forth. It's an exceptional way to disassociate yourself from, any kind of physical pain or any kind of involvement in it, but you're still involved in it, I can think of a teddy bear that a client would use to interact, and a lot of times if that person was feeling a physical pain, a stomach ache, then the teddy bear has a stomach ache, and you're like, oh, does he? Why? Did he eat something he shouldn't have? Oh, he swallowed the whole pack of bubble gum. It works. It really does work.
We just need to find the teddy bear for interacting with Sasquatch.
Sure. It's a buffer zone, and a lot of times it's not all the time. A lot of time it's only while they gauge who you are and what mood are you in and how are you going to interact with me today, because from day to day we all wake up grumpy or whatever. It's a way for them to wake up each day and then work into it, like, okay, how are we today?
Right.
Oh, the drum was part repetitive behavior, really. Just something, a zone to go into, almost like a mantra type, zone, or, but he carried a small drum around his neck and constantly just kind of beat out a rhythm with his thumb. And there was something within that rhythm that usually didn't change. It would change depending on his mood, but usually it was the same type of bum, and that brought some kind of safety to him. It was a safety sound in a way, It created, I guess, like a bubble of sound around him, a repetitive behavior that eased his anxiety a little bit, because without it, his anxiety would go through the roof. And sometimes the drum would get left behind by accident. Eventually you just pound your thumb through it. And so a book, for him to have a book, it had to be something solid, but it was a sign of contentment sometimes too. It would also be a sign of distress, and you could kind of tell because the pattern would change a little bit. And sometimes if he wasn't doing it at all, that was a sign of like intense, like, I can't work past this, I can't.
He was blocked.
Yeah, he was blocked. It definitely, like I said, coincided with his mood. There's every physical movement that you can think of, from hand movements and finger movements to rocking to swaying to constant back and forth head movements like this, which would make us dizzy, I would think. When it comes to time, you've got the social socially accepted time by a clock. And a lot of the individuals don't pay any attention to a clock. And so they go with their, what is it, the circadian rhythm? Is that what it is, I believe? It's getting dark, so it's time to get a shower, and then I get to have my ice cream. Or it's dark, and mom will be home, and then she'll make dinner. And then also the rhythm of the body, like, okay, I ate 8 hours ago, and now it's time to go to the bathroom. There's that whole entire cycle there. Without that in the mix, they could sit on the couch for hours, sit in a chair for hours, and not go or do anything, just there. One individual would want to watch television for an hour and then, go out and do something in town. And he would sit down for 2 minutes, flip through a channel, watch SpongeBob for like literally 2 minutes, and be like, okay, cool, let's go. And it's like, no, buddy, it's only been 2 minutes. No,
Pretty sure
it's time to go. And it's, no, 2 minutes, it hasn't been an hour. And there was no perception of time whatsoever.
And if you've basically been conducting the same routine for thousands of years, and
sure.
ever since you were born, you have no need for any abstract sense of time, because it's all concretely embedded in what the world is doing and what you're doing.
Sure. Within that realm of contentment, time just kind of slips by. But it has nothing to do with patience at all. It's just that there's no, association with the clock whatsoever. And I would imagine in an environment like this, you're totally going, from dawn to dusk. It's the sun. On a cloudy day, it's, the same thing. You can see the variations in the temperature, the variations in the sunlight coming through. That's kind of a classic thing, to have everything in its place and everything in a certain order. And, a lot of people derive a satisfaction from knowing exactly where something is, even when they're gone. You have a shelf in your house with your notebook and a jar of pens with 12 pens and 4 sharpened pencils. And when you use those items, it gives you a sense of satisfaction of using them. But while you're gone, you still have a satisfaction of knowing that it's still there, perfect, and nothing's changed. And, with certain individuals that I've worked with, there are certain things such as, the volume on the television. So the volume having to be at a certain number. Even when you turn it off, you know that television is at that number. Having your coffee mug in a certain place, and a certain place on the table when you're using it, a certain place in the dishwasher when you're washing it, and just knowing that it's right there. Same thing with a room, to have like 500 VHS tapes. And you look at them and you say, why not put them in alphabetical order or something? And yet they are in order. And if you move one out and move it over, it's, what's going on? And it gets moved back. And you look at it and sometimes that order will change too, depending on the mood. But yeah, there's that safety zone, that buffer, that this is my place and I have control. So Stephen was deaf and mute and autistic, but at the same time, when I first met him, he was working on a project where high intelligence there, in it. And so he took his Legos, of which he had thousands upon thousands of Legos, everything you could think of, an entire closet full of these Legos. And he started to build the ship that he saw on the television. And so his parents put it on the television for me and paused it so that I could see it. And you looked at the ship and you looked at the screen, and it was, a good 2 or 3 feet of Legos. And to look at it thinking that he saw the the movie once, and that's what he wanted. That's what he wanted to build, and he had that picture. Like, okay, it really blows your mind. It still blows my mind when I think about it. Like, it was just phenomenal. The similarities between what was on the screen and what he had built were just exact, and for it to be exact with big square blocks. Not just with the idea of Sasquatch, but within gorillas. I've read probably a dozen different gorilla books, and you listen to them, and sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so, a client that I've worked with. There were certain ape behaviors that were just like, are you kidding me? I think the first thing I noticed was the evasiveness. I worked in a group home. It was just a regular home with, the halls were a little bit wider for wheelchairs. And I knew that this particular individual was in the house. You could only be a few places. And you had a sense that, yes, they are there. I heard him like 5 minutes ago. I know he's in here. And searched the house head to toe. And they're not in there. I mean, systematically go through each room in a clockwise fashion, knowing that there's no way, through. Could not find that individual whatsoever. I never could figure it out. He'd just end up on the couch. You'd walk out and say, I'm finished, and he'd be on the couch, or he'd be standing in the kitchen, or he'd be standing behind you. Or it was always an odd sensation, like, how the hell did you just do that? With several individuals, definitely, over the course of the years. And that was just within the house, and it got worse out in public. To go to the department store could be just impossible. And then a half an hour later, when your nerves are shot, and you're just about ready to call and be like, look, I lost him, it'd be right there. Just very odd stuff that I've never been able to really put my finger on. In the bathroom cleaning with your morning coffee, and you turn to grab your coffee, and it's gone. What do you mean it's gone? I know I had it. I know I didn't. There's the ring of coffee right there on the sink. And then to go on the opposite side of the house and find that a certain individual had everybody's coffee.
It was all gathered together?
Right there in a row. He's just like, yeah, I got my coffee. I think I'll have everybody else's as well. Obsessive compulsive as well. Mm-hmm. If you had a coffee, then he could have two. Then he could have three. And the idea of having them there, having them in a row, having them in a certain area, and you don't move them. Like if he took your coffee cup, it's his now. If you move it, he gets PO'd. If you moved one a few inches out of the way,
even a few inches,
it's
So that is kind of potentially similar to the Sasquatch situation because of the arrangements that we find that are repeated again and again. These certain themes are repeated again and again.
Or like the rocks that I've always seen. 3 rocks in a stick, or 3 rocks that are of different colors and sizes, and then a rock of the same size is put in its place. That type of thing.
Outside your house in Vermont?
Well, it actually, yeah. I mean, I was talking about things and pictures that I've read in books and whatnot. Yeah. But personally, yes. In Groton State Forest, I had my tiny house there for about 2 years. I mean, out in the middle of nowhere. And woke up one morning and, there were, 3 rocks and a stick. I've got pictures of it. Sitting on my log pile that I didn't put there.
And when you saw that, did you right away make a connection back to your work with these individuals?
I didn't at that time, no. I mean, at that point, I was just too excited. Like, wait a minute. Yeah, it still puts me in awe. I kind of go there in my mind. Like, that whole idea of seeing that just blew my mind. I think that the communication, to be able to separate yourself, to communicate, but it not be you project that into an item, or if someone else has a similar item, then there's a connection there that's important, or to leave things for people, to come into, like the group home, a certain client would leave me treasures, or surprises, is what he would say. I got a surprise for you. I had to go find it, because that was like the opening, him saying, hey, there's a surprise for you, find it so that we can interact.
I love that.
And
that relates to people finding things on their porch,
or in their, for me, the 3 sticks,
the 3 sticks in the stone, or people
3
have
stones and a stick.
3 stones and a stick. People have gifting areas, and nothing will happen for 2 months, and all of a sudden one morning there's the surprise.
Right, exactly. And then there's the chairs full of teddy bears and stuff that get moved, or something gets moved and put up in a tree, which I think, I've actually read that in one of your books.
Yeah, does that strike you as reminiscent of
oh, yeah. It brings them into it. We look at a house and we think, okay, I'm in the house, this is my house, as a whole. And a lot of times an individual will look at it as different sections in that house. They've broken it down. Their chair at the table, their bedroom, their bowl that goes on their shelf in their cupboard in the kitchen. We look at it as being the kitchen, the cupboard, but they see it individualized into something personal. And it gives them a sense of solidity, I think, in their day. And it also gives them less anxiety, because they know, hey, if I do this and I go here, it's there.
That reminds me of the whole notion of boundaries and territory that seems to be so big in Sasquatch.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. It's a huge comfort. And for them, and I think you might have even mentioned it in your last book, a lot of things are, even if they're seeing something, there's a physical feel to it. If something of theirs is out of place, it's not, oh, my stuff's out of place. It's a physical jolt, or a tap, or a smack. Physically, that's how they feel it. And to avoid those feelings, they can compartmentalize each of their items. And then if something new comes into it, it changes everything. They have to reassociate themselves. If you had a chest full of stuffed bears, and you went and you put a new bear in, it's not the same chest that it's always been. It is now completely different. It is brand new. It's not just a new bear. It's that whole section that is new. It's like taking, like a painting and painting something new in it. Mm-hmm. It is not the painting that it used to be. It's not one section of the painting that's been changed. It's the entire thing now. Like, you can't look at the painting without knowing that it's different, and there's no wiping the paint off. It's permanent. So when you bring something new into an area that has been solidified like that for so long, and you bring something new in, it's readjusting all over again. I would imagine too that they've been through places that have natural occurrences like flooding or burning, or even a huge storm blowing things down. Would be something similar, that it would be familiar to them, like, oh, this is natural, as opposed to something odd brought in, like metals and plastics and stuff like that, or complete devastation where there's nothing but stumps left. I mean, I can relate to painting an individual's room a different color. Completely changed, brand new. It's a new room, I don't like it, I want out of here. Same room we've had for 15 years. There were a lot of similarities between, the great ape behaviors and certain individuals that I worked with. And then, of course, with your book, which just came out not long ago, I mean, it really does hit the nail on the head in a lot of different ways. I mean, there is a great similarity between, the supposed Sasquatch behavior and the individuals that I've worked with. There's no doubt about it.